striving for that, perfect mom award, all it does is really ultimately make us feel like failures and then push our kids to achieve, and make them feel disconnected from us.
Hey there, Mama. Welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. I'm Kirsten Tyrell, and I am the host of this awesome podcast where I get to sit down with moms from all over the world from various walks of life to share their stories of inspiration, knowledge, and all kinds of good stuff to remind you what a truly marvelous mom you are. So sit back and relax, or plug your headphones in and keep doing whatever you're doing, and enjoy today's episode of the Marvelous Moms Club. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Marvelous Moms Club. I'm chatting with somebody, I've talked about this before on the podcast. I always end up chatting with the person I need to chat with on the day that I talk to them. And I feel that way today. I have Randy Rubenstein sitting in front of me, and we are going to talk to you guys about some pretty awesome stuff when it comes to parenting. She's recently written a book that's coming out soon called The Parenting Gap. And oh my goodness, just reading the information that she sent to me today about what she does and what she specializes in just has me all warm and fuzzy inside. So thanks for being here, Randy, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you. And I connected with you through Megan Silianoff, who was on the podcast, who I adored and loved as well. And it's just so fun to keep having this ripple effect of people I get to meet through people 4 levels deep from the initial person I had on here. So it's so fun. And I'm so excited to hear what you have to share. Why don't you start by telling everybody how many kids you have and their ages and just kind of your mommy trenches. What's mommyhood like for you right now?
Well, I have 3 kids. My kids are each 4 grades apart, even though they're not necessarily 4 years apart. My oldest son is 18 and he is a freshman in college. So he just left mid-August. So that's been an interesting journey, getting used to one leaving the nest. And then I have a daughter who's 15. She's in 9th grade. So I'm right there in the middle of teenage girlhood. Yeah. And then my youngest son, Corey, is 10 years old and he is in 5th grade. So he's just finishing his final year in elementary school.
Wow. So you've got a little you're out of the toddler baby phases, but you've got a kid kind of in each little phase of life.
And that's what it's been like for the last 10 years. For the last 10 years, it seems like I've constantly been in 3 separate phases.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's definitely kept me on my toes and kept me in constant learning mode, because it's not like I can get too comfy in any one phase. It's like before, I'm constantly entering a new phase and still trying to, learn from my mistakes in the old phase and do it a little differently. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I love that. Did you space them out on purpose that far?
No,
or did it just happen?
No, it just happened. I had my first son young, young in today's standards, 27. And I was kind of thrown for a loop. I really wasn't ready to become a mom yet, but it happened and I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then when I had my daughter and I was 30, I really had her because it was just getting to be such a big space. I was like, I really don't really feel like I'm ready to revisit the baby thing, but I guess I know we want to have more than one child.
Yeah, it's time.
Fine, we'll just do it. And so then when I had her and I experienced how different it felt for me the second time and being 30, we kind of thought we were good. And I just started having a lot of dreams when my oldest son was starting to be 7. I mean, he was about to become 7. And I kept saying to my husband, I just feel like this has gone too fast. I want more time. And I started having dreams about him as a baby boy. And I said, I think we need to have one more baby boy. And he said, you can't be sure it's going to be a boy or girl, and I think I'm good. I'm a 2-kid man. I've got a boy, I've got a girl. We're good. We can go on vacation. We're out of diapers. And I beat him down. And eventually he was like, okay, fine. And lo and behold, a week before my oldest son's 8th birthday, we had a baby boy. Aww. And they're a week shy of 8 years apart. And it's really actually freaky, but they I think as men, they're going to look like identical twins because
Really?
they look exactly alike.
So you were
And
dreaming about the baby, not about your oldest.
I really was. I was really dreaming. And he has been the biggest gift to my oldest, who's been my most challenging child.
Hmm.
Um, he literally, I think, changed the course of my oldest son's life because I think my oldest son experienced what it was like to really love someone even more than you love yourself,
Hmm.
which we typically don't learn until we're parents ourselves.
Right.
And he has experienced that with his younger brother.
That's so sweet.
So it's very sweet to watch.
I
Yeah.
love it. So tell me about kind of your journey into the book. You know, you've been kind of studying this for 20 years, and I love what you said to me, how, I mean, it comes down to like the guilt, and it comes down to that gap between how we want to raise our kids and how it actually happens. The screaming, the threats. I mean, that is literally describing my life right now. Like, my
Hmm.
husband and I are looking at our son and we're thinking, we don't know what to do anymore. Like, the threats aren't working, the getting in trouble, the taking things away. Like, we know something has to change and we don't know what. So when did that happen for you? You said your oldest was your most challenging, and it's the same for me. He just has
Hmm.
a lot of big ideas and he's got a lot of motivation and he doesn't have a lot of control over his choices. And so just kind of talk to me about the journey and what you've learned and how you've learned it and that kind of thing.
Um, so, the aha moment for me really was I told one of my friends about it, I think a couple of years ago, and she's like, I don't really think that's such a big aha moment that anybody's going to find interesting if you write about it. And I'm like, but it's the truth. And so what really happened was I remember the moment. My oldest, this is 15 years ago. He's 18. He was 3, like a little over 3 when his sister was born. And my husband came home from work and I had the bassinet with the baby, the newborn baby girl in it in the middle of my living room for whatever reason. And my son was being 3 and he was running around and he was making some noise. And my husband came home and he was excited that his dad just got home from work. And so he's making some noise and the baby wakes up and she starts crying. And it was like a Calgon moment. And
Yeah.
my husband, who is now, I've done so much research, he's a highly sensitive person. I don't know if you've heard about that HSP. It's Elaine Aron's theory, I think,
No.
but it's fascinating. But he's a highly sensitive person, which just basically means like there's about 20%, or her theory is that 20% of the population has a highly sensitive nervous system. So a lot
Hmm.
of times, like loud noises really affect them a lot.
I bet that's
And
me. I can guarantee it. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because like when our babies would be crying, he would be like pulling his hair out, and I'm like, babies cry. It's gonna be okay. And he's like, I've got to pull over. I can't handle this. I can't take it. And really, it was like he was just getting overstimulated. He just that loud noise, the crying. It was like he couldn't think,
Yeah.
and he couldn't tune it out. And so he comes home from work, and he's trying to switch into home gear. And all of a sudden, we're having a Calgon moment where it's like the baby's crying and the 3-year-old's making noise and whatever. And he started yelling at, my son Alec. And I just remember it was like in slow motion because growing up, I'm very close to my parents, but my dad was a rageaholic. And I just had like a slow motion moment where I looked at him and I said, we're not doing it this way. We are not doing it this way. And I looked at him and I said, we're either taking a parenting class or going to like couples therapy. And he was like, what are you talking about? Like people that go to couples therapy, that's like, he thought it was like for, we grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And he's like, that's just for people that are getting divorced,
Yeah.
not realizing it's so mainstream now. And I said, fine, we'll take a parenting class. I don't care. And that was when we took our very first parenting class. And we were able to get on the same page and really learn a lot about child development. And that's when we made a conscious decision. We're going to do everything in our power not to have a household where we're screaming at our kids. And you know what? Every day, even to today, every day is a work in progress. But I have to say, it was at that moment that we really started working as a team. And so it's like we know he's noise sensitive. When he's feeling overwhelmed, I give him a look or a code word, he walks away. I'm able to, calm the situation. And so we tag team, and it's been a beautiful thing. I have to say, I think it's been better than couples counseling because it's helped us to really grow our family in a way that I don't think we would have been able to do had we never taken that parenting class.
Wow, that was one heck of a parenting class.
It really was. It was the beginning. I think I was hungry for the information of how to do it differently. And so where I started was, now I know because I've taken enough personality tests, I'm a fact finder. So that was the research, and my husband's a fact finder too. So that was the research. And once I had some research that made sense and tools to start using, I started using it. And then as the years went on, I just expanded my research and started learning more and more and more. And eventually I started teaching parenting classes myself. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of been my journey. Is I taught parenting classes for a lot of years. But more than anything, it really just kind of held me accountable in my own family. Because if I was going to show up every week teaching people a bunch of tools and theories, I needed to be sure that they really worked.
Yeah.
And so I started teaching those classes, and that's been part of my journey. Is I was teaching the classes and the information was great, but I wrote my book and I addressed this gap that I talk about in the book, because it's really about taking the classes and then actually being able to put them into practice in your life.
Right.
And that's what I think frustrates a lot of people is, okay, I've read some articles, I've read even maybe some books, I've watched some videos, and then I find myself in the heat of the moment with my kids, and I'm doing all the things I swore I would never do. I know better. Why am I not doing better? And so then the shame and guilt and all that stuff comes in. The mom guilt comes in, and it is a vicious cycle. And so that's really what my book addresses.
So I'm guessing, just based on what you just said, like, you're not just giving an explanation as to why kids act this way or an explanation as to why we react the way we do. You're giving actionable tools to work on. Because I've always said, like, I hate parenting books because they just make me feel bad about the parent that I am, and it's overwhelming. But I finally read one at the recommendation of a past guest and was really interested, and I loved it, and it really described, like, the different types of people, and then I finished it, and I was like, but now what? Like, I just felt like all it did was call out why it was happening, but it didn't tell me how to fix it or how I should really address the behavior or how I should fix myself, So do you feel like that's kind of the point of your book, is giving people the tools?
Yeah, my book has an 8-step process.
Nice.
And it's all about how to change patterns, how to change the patterns. And one of the things that I've figured out in my own journey and in now talking to lots of other people is we all love our parents. Mm-hmm. And even when we have a desire to do it differently, we don't want to resent our parents. We don't want to badmouth them. When we act like we know things that they don't know, a lot of times it creates this kind of weird adversarial relationship, and that doesn't feel good. So the way I describe it is I call it, I call it the parenting evolution. And it's that as humans, we're just meant to evolve. We're meant to do it a little bit better than the generation did before. And our kids will hopefully do it better than us. And the fact is, we live in this amazing information era. And we have access to so much information that our parents, really mainstream people, they just didn't have. I mean, it was like encyclopedias.
It's true.
So unless you went and got some form of a lot of higher education or a PhD in something, you really didn't have access to the things that regular folks like us, like I have been able to literally retrain my brain, and I work with my clients and teach them how to do the same. And it's fascinating. I mean, 20 years ago, we didn't even think it was possible to retrain your brain. Right. And now we know we do. So my book goes through this 8-step process on basically uncovering the pattern, understanding why it's there, not resenting and hating your parents for the pattern existing, knowing that we're just meant to evolve as human beings and do it a little bit better and continue evolving, and to then understand, how do we retrain the brain? Here's some tools. Here's ways that you actually can put into, like, little baby steps to put into practice in your life to start taking action and cause a pattern disruption. Because as humans, we are pattern seeking animals. Our brains, even when we feel stuck, even when we feel frustrated, when we find ourselves in a high stress situation, our brains naturally go back to our patterned program, which happened when we were in our childhood, right. Usually, in the first 7 years, really. And when we're stressed, we go back to that pattern. So we have to have a pattern disruption and learn how to have that pattern disruption, and then practice it consistently for 40 days. And before you know it, you literally have retrained your brain, and you get to build off of that and continue doing the work. And it's very cool. I mean, it's so fascinating to me, and I've lived it.
Yeah. So, okay, here's my question now. You said the first 7 years. My son is almost 7. So obviously, I don't think you're going to say, well, you're doomed because you've spent the last 6.5 years parenting in this way, and now you're going to switch. Do you feel like that repatterning for us of our brain and the way we behave will in turn repattern him? Or is this something he's going to have to repattern in his adult years? Have I screwed him up? Or is there still a chance?
Right. Isn't that funny? That question's in the back of most of our minds. No, that's the beautiful thing, is that because we know we as adults can actually retrain our brains. And that subconscious programming has been there since our first 7 years of life. So it's pretty solid and strong by the time you're in your 30s and 40s, right?
Yeah.
So if we're able to do it, think of how easy it is to do with a 7-year-old. I will tell you, even though we took our first parenting class when my oldest son was 3 years, 4 months, I think is when we started it, I didn't start teaching the parenting classes and really understand how I was going to shift and change things and really start learning about the brain until he was almost 8. So I feel like I really got started on, he really only started experiencing and reaping the benefits of what we've got going on here when he was almost 8.
Wow.
And his youngest brother has had it his whole life. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, and I can say at 18, it's amazing. Nobody told me, and I don't know what he said to me recently. We just had Parents Weekend last weekend. I didn't realize he was going to be so sweet when he left me. And he said to me, he turned around, he heard me say, he goes, "Mom, it's because I FaceTime with you twice a day. Most people don't do that." But I mean, literally, it's he just checks in. He checks in with me. He checks in with his siblings. He's helping to parent them from afar. They're sending him their test grades. Every time he talks to me, even if he's just walking to class, there's an "I love you."
Oh, I love that.
It's amazing to me how it's worked with him. And we did not get started with him until he was almost 8 years old. So take a deep breath and just know it's all going to be good. It's all going to be good.
Good. I'm glad I still have a fighting chance.
You do. And you know what? They're resilient. I mean, kids' brains are so malleable. I have a lot of times people come to me and they have teenagers and they're like, "It's too late, isn't it? It's too late." And the truth of the matter is that when I work with parents who have younger kids, yeah, my job is easier. Mm-hmm. But teenagers, even teenagers who are in the throes of all kinds of hormonal changes and tumult in their lives, the minute we change our behavior, it feels so good. They're on board. So even teenagers will get with the program in no time.
Oh, that's exciting. That's really cool. I love what you've created. I love that you have a book coming out so that the skills you have, because you're only one person. You can't coach every parent in the world. So I'm excited that there's a book, which I totally want. Just talking to you, I'm like, I need you in my life to be able to give me those steps, because really, like, as a parent, I feel like, and that's the premise of my podcast, like, you want to be the parent that you imagined you'd be before you even had kids, because we make fun of that, like, ideal that we had. We're just like, oh, I thought I would be this and this and this, and then I had kids and it was totally different. But I feel like in anything in life, if you could visualize it and you could dream that that's what you were going to be like as a parent, that's truly what you know is like your version of like success, and that's what you know you can do. And so, like, working back towards that ideal, that's not, like, laughable. That's not impossible. It's really important. And so I love, like, instilling that hope and that reminder that we can truly become that. Not that we're going to be perfect, because I think the ideal sometimes is idealistic and it's too perfect, but coming back to those things that we imagined we would do. And I love that you kind of have the same approach. It's awesome.
Well, one of my quotes, and it's actually a chapter in my book, and I say, perfection is the enemy of connection.
Oh, I like that.
Because that's the thing, is that when we strive for perfect and when we teach our kids to strive for perfect, it really sets up this just unreachable, unattainable goal. And ultimately, we end up feeling like failures. And when you feel like a failure, I mean, think about it, like, when you go out in the world and you're feeling crummy about yourself, like even when you're at Target, we were talking about Target before we started recording.
Yeah.
How do you interact with the other person or the checkout person when you're feeling like a failure versus when you're feeling like you're totally rocking it?
It's
and
true.
You're doing the best that you can, and that you're like connected to the people that you love the most in the world. You show up in every way in your life differently. So striving for that, perfect mom award, all it does is really ultimately make us feel like failures and then push our kids to achieve, and make them feel disconnected from us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it's a fine line. It really is. Like, being your best and trying to be your best, but giving yourself grace when you just, like, your best is it's not going to look pretty today.
Right.
Like, I've been sick the last couple of weeks. My best has been horrible compared to my best when I feel healthy.
Right.
So it's true. Like, but realizing that, and I feel like the guilt game is terrible and the self-hating game is terrible in parenting, because you yell and in the moment you feel better. And I had a girl on here in the very beginning of this podcast who talked about that. Yell less, love more. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm totally going to follow, and it didn't last very long for me because I didn't get to, like, I mean, obviously I didn't read the book closely enough, and I need a little bit more help. Obviously it's like you said, though, it's retraining the pattern, and
there's more. I listened to that podcast, and I loved her accountability journal that she did. And I loved a lot of the things she said, but so one of the things that has kind of hooked me in my journey and learning everything that I've learned is when I took the first parenting class when my kids were little, it was all about redirecting their behavior and kind of understanding why they do certain things and seeing the world from their perspective, so that I didn't make their behavior mean something that I thought it meant as an adult. Like, I really understood that, like, he's 3 and, like, he doesn't have an inner voice. Everything that goes through his mind comes out his mouth. Like, knowing those things are helpful, because it's not like us attaching an adult meaning to, he's 3. Oh my God, I have this narcissistic child who thinks the world revolves around him. He's seeing his baby sister sleeping. We finally just got her to sleep. She's sleeping. She's swaddled. And now he has to run around because he thinks the world revolves around him, making all this noise. And oh my gosh, I'm going to raise a narcissist. So often we make 3-year-old behavior when the truth of the matter is no, 3-year-olds just can't say things in their head. They don't have inner speech. Yeah. So every thought that goes through their mind comes out their mouth. And if they're excited because their dad just got home and they haven't seen him for 1,000,000 hours, because to them, one day is 1,000,000 hours, they're going to yell with enthusiasm and excitement. And then when we yell at them for their joy, there's so much confusion that goes
That's
on,
true.
and and so there's this miscommunication that starts. But I think the thing that hooked me and the parenting class I eventually ended up teaching was there was a lot of science in it, because I needed to understand what happens in the brain that causes us to yell and have those responses. I needed, as a fact finder, I needed to have a grasp of that so that I could learn how to stop that behavior from happening, and how to understand when my husband was going to that place, what was going on in his brain, and how I could support him to stop that behavior from happening. And so that's been super helpful for me, is taking it a layer or 2 layers or 3 layers deeper and really understanding what's going on in our brains that causes us to lose it and yell in all those moments, and not show up as the parent we intended to be, and then suffer all the guilt and shame afterwards.
Yeah.
So
I like
there's
that.
more. Yeah, there's more to the process. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so a couple things. Tell everybody about the free gift you're offering them, because I'm really excited. I'm going to link to this in the show notes, but it's awesome because we can get started now, even before, because when is the book set to release?
So right now, the ebook will be coming out mid-February. The truth is that the book got picked up by a bigger publisher. My book is out in e-format right now, but it's called a different thing than it's going to be called.
Okay.
So right now, if anybody wanted to get the book in e-format, because the content is staying 99% the same, it's really just the name and the book cover that's changing, and a couple of tiny tweaks on the inside. So it's called Am I Screwing Up My Kids? I can send you that Amazon link.
Okay.
And it's available. It's really affordable. It's like, I think $4.99 on Amazon.
Awesome.
And so that's an ebook format, and you can download it on the Kindle app and read it on your iPad. If you don't have a Kindle or your phone, it's really, Kindle app is free. So the new version is coming out, ebook, mid-February, and the print version will be out mid-August. And I promise to get your address after we're recording. Awesome. And send you a signed copy of the print version.
Yay.
And for you guys today, I have my free guide, which is 6 steps to stop yelling and parenting with fear, to get you started.
I love it. I'm so excited to get this, and I'm excited to get the Kindle book, and I'm excited to have a print copy, because I'm just excited. I need it. I really do. I really, really do. Today was like a really frustrating, hard day, and especially because I've been sick, I just feel like totally defeated, and I'm just excited to have something to work with, some tools to get me going. And I love that you're not like done with momming, but you're like, you've done the stages that I'm in right now. Like, you're at least beyond that, and I feel like, there's so much to be learned. And I love this. I love having a podcast with moms from so many different walks of life, because there's so much we do learn from each other. And I love that you've been able to come and share that with everybody listening, because I know I'm not the only one who feels like this. I know there's a huge need for what you're teaching and what you have to offer. So I really am so grateful for you to come on here and share what you have shared. And that being said, it's time for like the final question of the podcast, which everybody loves to answer. What makes you a marvelous mom?
Oh, gosh. What makes me a marvelous mom? Okay, so I think I said this to you before. I think for most moms, the self-promotion is a hard thing. It feels awkward. I think what makes me a marvelous mom is that I really have succeeded in changing an unhealthy pattern within my family. I think I've changed my family legacy. And honestly, where I found out it's rooted was in Holocaust pain. And my belief is that this work, this changing the unhealthy patterns and really showing up as the parent that you always intended to be, and closing that gap so that you are aligned in terms of your behavior as a parent with the feelings you have for your kids in your heart. I think I have really done that. And I believe that it heals past, present, and future generations. I've seen healing in my parents my siblings, and now my kids. We really have a connected family dynamic, and we're normal, and we argue, and I deal with, teenagers that sometimes hate me. And even my 10-year-old, who is the kindest, sweetest, most delicious child on the planet, he twice in his life, he's given me hate mail. This is why I don't like you. And, so we really have an honest, connected family dynamic, but it's real, and every day is imperfect. And I think I had said to you, what it was in a nutshell for me was we had somebody who stayed with us for 2 weeks about a year ago. And she said, I've really seen you guys in action, and y'all are a normal family, but there's just so much love here. I feel the love in the walls. I feel it in the furniture. Wow. And I just thought that was like the best thing anyone's ever said to me. So I think that's what makes me a marvelous mom, is that I've really dug in and done the work. And I think my people are, for the most part, like kind, happy people.
That's all you can hope for, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got good people. You've made some good ones.
I did.
That's awesome. Well, I have loved chatting with you. I feel like we could talk for such a long time and never even scratch the surface. So I appreciate it. And everybody listening, again, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope you've gotten a little bit of food for your soul and are excited to go and get the book and the free guide. I know I am, as soon as we hang up. So thank you for listening. And thanks again, Randy.
Thank you so much. So great to talk to you.
You too. All right, everybody, have a marvelous day, and we'll see you on the next episode. Hey, if you're dying for a little bit more Randy in your life, go to her website, randyrubenstein.com, and register for her next opening for her 6-week course for parenting. It is amazing. My husband and I took it together, and there are so many useful tools in there that are going to really help you develop stronger relationships with your kids and have the family that you've always dreamed of. So head over to randyrubenstein.com and get started.